Hey guys, Teresa here. Welcome back to my channel, Lost My Thread. I am back with part 2 of my current Clash of the Pattern series, the Smart Summer Shorts Smackdown. If you missed part 1 of the series, I'll put a link to it up here and down in the description box, but basically I'm comparing 3 different shorts patterns in a series of different videos. Today I'm going to be focusing on the fit of the 3 pairs of shorts. I don't necessarily expect them to fit me perfectly right out of the packet. That's very rare, that's unusual. Fitting particularly the bottom half of your body in a 3D shape is really quite specific, and not all pattern companies are going to have the exact same block that matches my body. What I really want to know though is how accurate do I think the sizing is? So if I base things on my size, are they pretty close? Also looking at what adjustments I might need to make, how easy it is to make those adjustments, and if you can have any information before you make the pattern to have an idea if you're likely to need any adjustments. The first one I'll show you here is the Pietra shorts by Closet Core Patterns. So I made all of these out of muslin calico fabric, which does mean that any of these gathers are going to be really especially pronounced, but it does give you a good idea. It's inexpensive fabric, it's just a bit of a rough and ready version. And then here are my Palisade shorts by Papercut Patterns. I think the benefit of making muslins as well is you can get an idea of what the construction is like, so it makes it a bit easier when you're making the finished garment. And then finally, the Dorian shorts by Seamwork. I feel like overall, all 3 of these have given me a pretty good idea, and I'm going to break down section by section of how well I think these worked. Now, as far as picking my sizes, I'm going to put up the chart so that you can see what I was working with and why I chose what I did. My waist measurement is 34 inches, just normally when I'm standing, but when I'm sitting it does increase to 35.5 inches. Most people's waists do increase when they sit, and I wanted to make sure these were going to be comfortable, hopefully standing and sitting. And my current hip measurement is 45.5 inches. When I was looking at the Palisade shorts, the size 6 was pretty spot on for the waist, but it was definitely a bit small in the hip. Whereas the size 7 was definitely going to be quite roomy in the waist, even though it was a closer fit at the hip, but again, still a little bit big. What I decided to do in the end was just to choose a size 7, knowing that I might need to take that elastic in a little bit, just making sure that particularly for that sitting waist measurement, I wanted it to still be comfortable. The Dorian shorts by Seamwork, the size 14 was spot on for my waist, but definitely too small for the hip. The size 16 was too big in the waist and pretty spot on for the hip. So what I decided to do was to make a size 14 at the waist, grading out to a 16 at the hip. Looking at the Pietra shorts, the size 16 was a little bit bigger in the waist and definitely a little small in the hip. The size 18 was definitely too big in the waist and a little bit bigger on the hip. The reason I decided to make the size 16 is because I have definitely had feedback from people saying that they often size down with this pattern. They find that it's a bit oversized, so I thought I'll go with what it says for the size 16 measurement and take it from there. Now, one of the biggest factors for me with how happy I'm going to be with these shorts is where they actually hit on my body. I mentioned in a previous video that I do have quite a high natural waist, so quite often I need to extend the rise to be able to get things to sit where I want them to be. The Closet Core Patterns, as a standard for them, I usually have to lengthen the rise by 1 inch, and they actually do give the front rise measurement. So I could have done that before I made the muslin, but I thought, you know what, I'm just going to make it as it is, as it stands. It definitely was too short in the rise. I was getting a bit of a wedgie situation when I was wearing it. It was wanting to pull up and sit at my natural waist because that's where the elastic was pulling it to be, but it was definitely not very comfortable for that reason. So I do need to lengthen the rise on that by 1 inch. It's interesting because both the Pietra shorts and the Palisade shorts both claim to be high rise, but I did find that the Palisade shorts was actually 2 inches too low for my natural waist. Now again, I know I often have to increase it a bit, but to me it definitely was sitting more of a mid-rise. I know that's going to vary a little bit depending on your own particular shape. And the Dorian shorts didn't actually specify whether they were meant to be any particular rise, but they looked like a high rise in the photo. And for the first time, possibly ever, on a pair of shorts or trousers, these were actually 1 inch too long in the rise. They were very long, and if I was pulling them all the way up to my waist, they were going to go quite past my waist and still be comfortable. Similarly, the inseam length, so the length from the crotch to the bottom of the shorts, is a critical measurement for me. And I did just make them as they were out of the packet, knowing that I was going to want to extend a couple of them. So the Palisade shorts was about 3 1/4, 3.5 inch inseam. The Dorian shorts was 3.5 inch inseam, and the Pietra shorts was a 4-inch inseam. Personally, I like a good 4-inch inseam, so I know that I'll be lengthening the leg length for the other two. Another critical measurement is the thigh circumference, and that's going to make the biggest difference when you sit down in these shorts. I measured my thigh where I want these shorts to hit, and for me it's 24.5 inches around. The smallest of the three was the Palisade shorts. That was 29.5 inches around. The Pietra shorts was 30 inches around, and the Dorian shorts was 31 inches. That was the only pattern that actually told you that measurement before you make the shorts as well. Now, all of the things I mentioned, I feel like are things that theoretically you could have the information before you cut out your first version of these shorts. But it's going to be easier depending on how much information they give you in their instructions. The Patra shorts, I really appreciate they gave you the inseam, they gave you the front rise length, they gave you the finished circumference around the waist and at the fullest circumference of the hip, but they didn't give you the thigh circumference. The Dorian shorts did not give you the rise, but it gave you the inseam and the thigh circumference and the finished measurements at the waist and the hip. The Palisade shorts gave you the circumference at the waist and hip, and then a length from the top of the short to the bottom of the short, which I don't find a very useful measurement. So like I said, if you have all the information going in, you might be able to know in advance if you're likely to need to make some adjustments. I didn't make adjustments, I made them as is, and I want to tell you how they were just based on the sizes that I picked. Starting with the Dorian shorts, these were definitely very loose, surprisingly loose. I had a ton of room in these. I would very much want to shorten the elastic in future versions. I feel like they just looked a bit sloppy. Based on the lines that I was getting around the front crotch area, I would also want to do a shortened crotch adjustment by 1/4 inch. From the side, I actually didn't see a whole lot of gathering from that elastic, partly because I feel like that elastic needed to be shorter. I think I will shorten it by 1 inch next time. It's difficult because you are actually able to try these on and adjust the elastic before you finish the shorts. But the problem is I didn't know where the crotch was going to sit yet, so you try them on before you've done the crotch seam, and I didn't want to make them fitting my natural waist if they were going to be a bit lower rise. So had I known they were going to be potentially right up to my natural waist, I would have tightened it before finishing them. So it is at least giving you that option. But again, I think if you knew the rise in advance, then you'd be more likely to know, okay, where is this actually going to be sitting? So generally I am happy with the fit at the side. I think it looks good. Looking at the back, I do appreciate that flat back at the waistband. I think that looks really nice, but I feel like the fit over my bum isn't great. It's kind of bulky and just a little bit too much fabric towards the bottom of the bum. I think I would end up wanting to do a 1/4 inch thin thigh adjustment for that one to make it sit a little bit more flat. Now that is actually a very similar adjustment to the shortened crotch adjustment. So I think if I just take a 1/4 inch out of the front and the back of the crotch in that way, I think these will sit a lot better on my body. Moving on then to the Pietra shorts by Closet Core. From the front, I think these ones look really pretty fantastic. They don't feel the most comfortable because I know that the rise is a bit short and so things are pulling up in an uncomfortable way, but everything looks really nice and flat. I don't think there's a need for any adjustment on these. I think especially considering I'm working with muslin fabric, I think that is pretty crease free and pretty spot on. The only thing is I know that that elastic is definitely a bit short and I can see that things are just a little bit too tight around the waist to hip area, that kind of lower waist, upper hip area, and I know that's just because everything's getting pulled to the back with the elastic. Looking at the side view, I think it is pretty obvious what I was saying as far as the elastic being too tight. You can see that everything's getting pulled at the waist seam. It looks nice and straight on the side of the leg, and then at the very top it's just getting pulled to the back where the elastic is too tight. This is another pattern that you can actually try on and adjust the elastic before you actually finish it. And I did try it on. I thought the elastic seemed about right. I didn't actually look at the side though. I should have looked where that side seam was sitting, and I also definitely should have tried sitting with this sitting at my waist. Then I would have known that I was going to need to expand that a little bit. Looking at the back, it is definitely the issue I'd worried about with having way too much fabric below that waistband, lots of bulk, lots of gathers, but I'm conscious that this is calico fabric, muslin fabric, which is the stiffest, most structured fabric. It's thick, it's not going to fall in the way that my own fabric is going to be because I've got a linen viscose blend. It's going to be a lot more drapey, but also if I loosen that elastic a little bit, there won't be quite so much gathering in. As far as the fit around the bum, I think it looks good. I'm aware it's uncomfortable and it's pulling up a little bit, but if I lengthen the rise, I think overall the fit there is really good. And then the Palisade shorts by Papercut Patterns, I think from the front they do look pretty good. I don't think there's really too much obvious gathering over the hip, though I know there is a bit there. It doesn't look too bulky. It doesn't look like it's adding too much to my hips, which is definitely a plus. There are some horizontal lines around the crotch though, so I think I need to do a flat pubis adjustment. I'll start with just 1/8 of an inch because sometimes a little goes a long way with that type of adjustment, but I can always adjust it a little bit into the seam allowance when I make the finished garment if I think I need a little bit more. And then looking at the side, I was expecting there to be quite a lot of bulk from the pockets. A lot of people said that they found that the crossover pocket created a lot of bulk. It may be the fabric that I'm working with, but I don't think that actually was too much of an issue for me. I like the look over the side there. I do think that there is really not very much gathering at the waistband, and I think that probably that elastic needs to be a bit tighter. So there will be a little bit more gathering in my finished garment, but also that's going to be sitting higher up on my natural waist because I'm going to be lengthening that to make it sit a bit more comfortably for me. And then again from the back, I was impressed that there wasn't too much gathering below the waistband there. I feel like the fit over the bum is pretty good. I don't think there's any adjustments needed from the back. Because all of these patterns have a fairly complex construction with a lot of unusual pieces, it's not necessarily very obvious which pieces you need to adjust. The Pietra shorts has a really great diagram in the instructions where it shows you if you need to grade between sizes or if you need to adjust the crotch length. It shows you exactly where you need to do that. So for me, I knew that I wanted to adjust the rise and make it a bit longer. So I needed to lengthen the rise of the back leg, the side front, the center front, and the pocket at 2 different points. So there's a fold line, and if you fold along there, then you can just trim along that point to make sure that you are lengthening it at the right stage. All of these things make a little bit more sense once you've made the pattern, or at the very least folded those pieces and laid them on top of each other so that you can see how they all fit together in the end. Closet Core also has a really great pants fitting guide. That is where I was using the images where I was showing you how I was deciding to make the adjustments for my shorts. I do think that kind of thing is definitely a bit challenging and you're not always going to get it right every time, but I feel like they have these really useful diagrams and descriptions that you can hopefully pinpoint issues where you think you might want to adjust. That pattern has length and shorten lines for both the rise and for the inseam, which is really useful. The Dorian shorts do also have those same lengthen and shorten lines both for the inseam and for the rise, but I will say that it's not necessarily as easy to tell which pieces you need to alter. They don't give you a nice diagram, so what I would definitely recommend is to actually lay the pattern pieces on top of each other, looking at the instructions, understanding what's going to overlap, what's going to connect, what darts need to match, and then it can help you to decide, okay, well, this is where I'm going to actually trim these. These are the pieces that are going to be involved, and these are the ones that don't necessarily need to be a part of those adjustments. For my Dorian shorts, I shortened the rise, and I had to shorten that on the front center, the back side, and the front side. To shorten the inseam, I needed to adjust all of those, but also the pocket lining and the pocket facing. To do my shortened crotch adjustment, my thin thigh adjustment by 1/4 inch, I needed to do that on the front and the back center pieces. Seamwork do also have a pants fitting guide that you can link to from the instruction booklet, but there's no diagrams or just descriptions, and personally, I just don't find it as easy to follow. The Palisade shorts do not have any lengthen and shorten lines anywhere on the patterns. They do not have any pants fitting guides, so I was using what I'd learned from the other patterns, laid all the pieces on top of each other in the way that the pattern is going to be constructed, and then I had a pretty good idea of where I needed to make any adjustments. To lengthen the rise, I needed to adjust the front leg, the back leg, the pocket bag A, and the fly fusing. To lengthen the inseam, I needed to adjust the front leg, back leg, side leg, and then I did my 1/8 of an inch flat pubis adjustment on the front and back leg. So looking at the overall fit as they were compared to the body measurements that I was using, I do feel like the Dorian shorts fit the least well. They were quite big and bulky just in general. They were extremely high rise compared to what I was expecting. They probably need the most adjustments of the three, and I feel like they gave you decent amount of information to be able to make those adjustments easily. The Palisade shorts were the next best fit out of the lot, just based on my measurements, and I was generally pretty happy with those. The adjustments I need to make are pretty typical adjustments that I do need to make, but I definitely would knock it down some points, because if you need to make those adjustments, it is quite a challenge to figure out which pieces you need to adjust. You basically need to put this pattern together with the pattern pieces to be able to understand that, which I feel like is just unnecessary work, and they could have helped you out for that. The Pietra shorts were definitely the most well fit, just straight out of the packet, and they gave you the best information about how you know what adjustments you might need to make before you make it, but then exactly how you make those adjustments if you find that you need to make any. So at the end of my last video, I had the Palisade shorts at the top of the leaderboard, followed by the Pietra shorts, and then the Dorian shorts. Things are definitely going to be shifting around today. I think the Pietras need to go up to the top for sure, as far as the fit and the easiness of fitting them. Next down, I am going to put the Palisade shorts, just because I feel like the sizing was at least a bit more accurate. Yes, it's more difficult if you need to make adjustments, but you're less likely to need to make them if they're more accurate right out of the packet. The Dorian shorts are sitting at the bottom now as far as the fit. I feel like, yes, you can make those adjustments relatively easily with the information they give you, but it's not super easy, and I feel like they should be fitting better based on the measurements that I was starting off with. Of course, it is still all to play for. In the next video in this series, I'm going to be talking about the instructions, the construction method, what I thought these were like to put together, how much I enjoyed the process. And then in the final video of the series, I will be talking about which ones I feel like I like the style, the shape, the silhouette of, and which ones I'll be wanting to make more of in the future. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope it was fun to get into the nitty-gritty with me. I always enjoy these videos, figuring out some of the finer details of what I like and don't like about these patterns. Please do give me a like if you enjoyed my video today. Leave me a comment down below if you've made any of these patterns, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Obviously, we're all going to be starting with different body shapes and different body types, so my adjustments and my issues with these patterns may not be the same as yours. It's always really interesting to get other people's feedback as well. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Make sure you're subscribed to my channel if you want to see the rest of these series or any of my other videos. I'll be back very soon. Bye!